It has been raining for 6 days straight. The ground outside is mud. The rivers are rising. And you cannot hunt, cannot forage effectively, cannot really do much of anything the way you normally would. For a huge portion of human history, this wasn't a disaster movie premise. It was simply the wet season, and it happened, reliably, every single year. You probably picture ancient life as a constant, desperate scramble for food, every single day, all year round. The truth is more seasonal, and more strategic, than that. Long stretches of bad weather weren't a surprise your ancestors had to improvise around from scratch each time. They were expected, planned for, and in some ways, built directly into how entire communities organize their year. Start with the most direct evidence anthropologists have for this, not from digging up the deep past, but from carefully observing people still living close to that rhythm in living memory. In the 1970s, archaeologist Betty Meehan spent extended time living with the Anbarra people of Arnhem Land in northern Australia, documenting, in extraordinary day-by-day detail, how their entire way of life shifted between the dry season and the wet season. During the wet season, when heavy monsoon rains made much of the usual hunting and foraging territory difficult or impossible to access, the Anbarra didn't simply struggle through unchanged. They relocated to different, specific camps, chosen deliberately for wet season conditions, and shifted their entire diet toward different, more reliably available food sources, particularly shellfish, that stayed accessible even when everything else became difficult to reach. This detail matters enormously. It means, what did people do when it rained for a week? Has a real answer, and the answer is, they had already planned for this. Seasonal rain wasn't treated as an emergency. It was treated as a known, recurring condition of the year, the same way you plan differently for winter than summer, except the planning had to be precise enough that an entire community's survival depended on getting it right, year after year. Now picture a specific rainy week itself, once that seasonal move had already happened. You are under whatever shelter your group maintains, a rock overhang, a cave mouth, a hut with a steep enough roof to shed water. Hunting large game becomes far less efficient in heavy rain, both because animals themselves shelter and become harder to track, and because tracking itself, which depends heavily on reading footprints and disturbed ground, becomes dramatically harder when rain erases every trace within hours. So the group's daily rhythm shifts inward, literally and figuratively. This is where a huge amount of essential, unglamorous work actually got done. Archaeologists studying were patterns on stone tools, along with ethnographic accounts of groups still practicing traditional toolmaking, have found that periods of enforced downtime were often when the most detailed, time-intensive craft work happened, knapping new stone tools, working hides into usable leather, weaving cordage in baskets, repairing shelters, all tasks that require sitting still, concentrating, and having genuinely uninterrupted time, something a normal foraging day rarely offers in abundance. Here's the part that reframes the whole picture. You might assume a rainy week was simply lost time, days subtracted from a hard, productive life. Anthropological observation of groups like the Anbarra, and many others living close to a seasonal rhythm, suggests something closer to the opposite. Enforced closeness, enforced stillness, and enforced proximity to other people for days at a stretch appear, consistently, to be when the heaviest social and cultural work of a community happens. Extended storytelling sessions, detailed teaching of children by multiple adults at once, resolution of ongoing social tensions that a normal, dispersed workday doesn't allow time for. The rain didn't just pause subsistence work. It concentrated social life into a smaller, denser space, and that concentration appears to have mattered. There's a genuinely striking archaeological echo of this pattern much further back in time. Rock shelters with extremely dense layers of stone tool debris, food remains, and, in some sites, pigment and early art suggest repeated, extended occupation by groups sheltering through difficult stretches of weather, likely including sustained rain, across many separate seasons over enormous spans of time. Some of the richest concentrations of early symbolic material, pigments, engraved objects, deliberately arranged living spaces, appear in exactly these kinds of long occupation shelter sites, not in brief, temporary camps. It's a reasonable inference, though not a certainty, that forced indoor time, week after week, season after season, gave early humans something modern life often struggles to manufacture on purpose, genuinely unstructured hours, together, with nothing urgent to do except talk, teach, and make things. This mirrors your own life more directly than you might expect. Think about the last time bad weather actually kept you inside for days, a real storm, a real forced pause. If you're honest, some of it was almost certainly frustrating. But some of it likely also produced exactly the kind of thing your ancestors' rainy weeks produced. An unplanned conversation you wouldn't otherwise have had. A project you finally had time to finish. A stretch of genuinely unhurried time with the people around you. The rain hasn't changed. What's changed is how rarely modern life allows that forced stillness to happen at all. It has been raining for 6 days straight, and inside the shelter, nothing about that week looks like waste. Tools are being finished. Stories are being told to children, who will retell them decades later. Hides are becoming clothing that will matter enormously once the rain finally stops. The storm outside was never simply an obstacle. For a huge stretch of human history, it was also, quietly, one of the only times an entire community reliably had nowhere else to be,